Hey, Army. Before you scroll away, watch this until the very end. Because today we're breaking down the moment that made Twitter, TikTok, and Weverse explode all at the same time. Park Jimin, the guy they call Filter, the one with the innocent face that you should never, ever trust when he's been too quiet for too long. Because it turns out, behind the massive success of BTS's comeback with the album Erarang, behind the Spotify records, behind the historic Gwangwoman concert, Jimin had been quietly preparing something that nearly sent J-Hope into shock and caused Namjoon, the calm and collected leader of BTS, to completely lose his composure. And the twist at the end? Nobody saw it coming. Not even us. Stay right here. Before we get into the prank drama, we need to talk about just how enormous this moment was for BTS, and why that context made it the perfect setting for Jimin to do what Jimin does best. For nearly 4 years, ARMY waited. And this wasn't ordinary waiting. This was crying alone in your room at midnight, refreshing Weverse every hour, surviving on decade-old fan cams, and hoping that someday the 7 of them would stand on a stage together again. It was the kind of waiting that tests your faith in a way nothing else really can. And then, in mid-2025, one by one, the members of BTS completed their mandatory military service. Jimin went in first, December 2022, and came home first in June 2024. The others followed, until finally, by June 2025, the last member was discharged. And you know what happened next? All 7 of them, RM, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V, and Jungkook, packed their bags and moved together to Los Angeles for 2 months. It was the first time all 7 had shared the same space since 2019. They kept a strict schedule, 6 days a week, mornings for physical training, afternoons and evenings in the studio writing and recording together. RM described it to GQ as feeling like being trainees again. Except this time they showed up carrying years of world tours and billions of streams on their backs. 7 grown men, 1 house, 1 studio, and Jimin with too much free time and too many ideas. On January 4th, 2026, Big Hit Music officially announced BTS's return along with a world tour. The album title, Erarang, was revealed on January 15th, named after a centuries-old Korean folk song, a symbol of connection, distance, and reunion. The album itself was described as a statement, BTS returning not as who they were before, but as who they'd each become separately, now choosing to be together again. 14 tracks, produced with collaborators from around the world. Every member contributing their own voice, not just vocally, but in the writing room. RM had credits on nearly every track. Suga and J-Hope worked on songs like Body to Body, Merry Go Round, and Normal. Jimin contributed to They Don't Know About Us. And J-Hope poured himself into his parts with the same meticulous energy he's always been known for. Which is exactly why what Jimin did hit so perfectly. Now let's get into it. The prank that ARMY eventually nicknamed the One More Time moment began with something that looked completely harmless on the surface. During the recording sessions in LA, the group had developed a small tradition. Whenever a member finished recording their vocal or rap parts for a track, they'd play it back for the whole team in the listening room. Everyone gathered, heard it together, gave feedback. It was collaborative, warm, and very BTS. One afternoon, it was J-Hope's turn. He had just finished laying down his rap for Body to Body. And if you know anything about Jung Hoseok, you know that man does not walk into a recording booth unprepared. He rehearses, he drills, he fine-tunes every syllable. When he stepped out of that booth that day, his expression said everything. He knew it was good. The production team gave him the nod. Namjoon, who was present and had been listening closely as he often does during recording sessions, gave his quiet stamp of approval. Everything was settled. Everyone was happy. And then Jimin raised his hand. Hobia, can you do it one more time? J-Hope turned around. His smile shifted just slightly. Why? Was something off? It's not wrong, Jimin said, with the most serene and innocent expression a human face has ever produced. I just think it could be even better. Try one more time. Now here's the thing about J-Hope. He's a perfectionist. He trusts his team. And Jimin is one of his closest friends in the world. So without a second thought, J-Hope walked back into the booth, recorded it again, came back out, and everyone was quiet. Then Jimin tilted his head slightly and said, one more time. J-Hope blinked. What's wrong with it now? Nothing's wrong. I just feel like one more take will make it perfect. J-Hope went back in. Third take. He came out with the energy of a man who was beginning to wonder, but still too professional to question. And this time, something unexpected happened. Namjoon, RM, the leader, the philosopher, the man credited as a songwriter on nearly every track on this album, the person with an IQ that gets brought up in every BTS documentary ever made. Namjoon closed his eyes, listened to the playback of the third take, and nodded slowly. Yahobi, I think one more time would actually be good. The room shifted. J-Hope looked at Namjoon, then at Jimin, then back at Namjoon. You're serious? Both of them nodded, completely straight-faced. J-Hope exhaled deeply, squared his shoulders like the professional he is, and walked back into the recording booth for the fourth time. And outside that booth, Jimin and Namjoon were both physically falling apart, trying not to laugh. Namjoon had turned to face the wall. Jimin was biting his lower lip hard enough to leave a mark. Shoulders shaking, eyes watering. Two grown men who had just committed to a bit they could no longer physically maintain. Because the truth, which everyone in that room except J-Hope already knew, was that there was absolutely nothing wrong with any of the takes. Not a single one. The very first recording had already been approved by the production team before J-Hope even walked out of the booth. Every take after that was equally, if not identically, excellent. Jimin had started the whole thing as a joke. A simple, mischievous, very Jimin joke. And somehow, through the perfect storm of Namjoon's genuine attentiveness and J-Hope's trusting nature, what started as a one-person prank became a two-person conspiracy where one of the conspirators had absolutely no idea he was involved. Namjoon, with his 148 IQ, had listened so carefully to J-Hope's third take that he genuinely convinced himself there was room for improvement. He wasn't in on it. He had been fully absorbed into the bit without realizing the bit existed. He had been pranked into becoming the co-prankster. When J-Hope finally emerged from the booth for the fifth time, visibly tired but still composed, because that is the kind of person he is, Jimin couldn't hold it any longer. Hobie, why? Everything was perfect from the very first take. I was pranking you. 3 full seconds of silence. Then J-Hope reacted in the most J-Hope way possible. He burst out laughing while simultaneously hitting Jimin's arm repeatedly, shouting, "Ya Park Jimin," at a volume that, by multiple accounts, could be heard through 2 closed doors. Everyone in the room dissolved. The production staff, the other members who had been watching, all of them, except one person. Everyone slowly turned to look at Namjoon. Namjoon stood very still. He blinked once, then twice. Wait, so I also? Yes, Junnie, Jimin said with the sweetest smile in the world. You were in it too. Namjoon looked at the ceiling. He took a long, slow breath. He said something in Korean that the witnesses present have collectively agreed not to translate publicly out of respect for his image as BTS's thoughtful, articulate leader. And with that, the one more time moment was born. Now, this didn't happen directly on camera, but as tends to happen in the world of BTS, the story made its way out. Whether through staff members who were present, through other members who couldn't keep it to themselves, or through Suga, who by several accounts was also in the building and witnessed the whole thing, the full story eventually reached ARMY. And when it did, the internet did what the internet does. The hashtag trended in South Korea, Indonesia, Brazil, the United States, and the Philippines within 2 hours. Fan edits flooded every platform. Someone made an animation of Jimin standing in the corner of a dark room with the caption, "Villain Arc." Someone created a graphic of Namjoon with IQ 148, but still got bamboozled by one more time. A compilation video appeared collecting every moment J-Hope had ever been startled across BTS's entire career, ending with the text, "And we hadn't even seen the worst of it yet." J-Hope himself, during a fan engagement session after Ararang's release, was asked about it directly. His response has since been screenshotted, captioned, and shared so many times that it may now be more famous than several of his actual song lyrics. Jimin, he is dangerous. The problem is his face. If he had a suspicious face, I would always be on guard. But because his face is too clean, too innocent looking, I always believe him. This has to stop. ARMY immediately clipped that statement, edited it over the instrumental of Filter, and released it into the world. It now has millions of views. Namjoon, characteristically, responded in a different register. In a Weverse post that appeared shortly after the story circulated, he wrote, "And this needs no additional context. Sometimes genius can become blind in the most unexpected places. That day, I learned something about trust and vocal recording." Fans flooded the comments with hundreds of question marks, until Jimin replied to the post with a single emoji, smiling face with halo. For longtime ARMY, none of this came as a surprise. Jimin has always been exactly this. The BTS in the SOP2 incident alone should have been warning enough for everyone. He invited Jhope on a late-night walk through a dark forest to a row of abandoned buildings, and then screamed at the top of his lungs on the second floor just to watch Jhope nearly jump out of his skin before laughing so hard he could barely stand. Jhope eventually called the whole fear test off, not because of the dark or the buildings, but simply because there were too many scares in too short a time. The pattern is consistent. Jimin is the kind of person who can stand in front of a stadium of 80,000 people and deliver choreography with precision down to the angle of his fingertips. And then, the moment the cameras cut, become the single greatest source of organized chaos in any room he walks into. And he always gets away with it. The reason is threefold. His face, first of all. It is physically impossible to stay angry at that face for longer than approximately 45 seconds. His own members have admitted this on multiple occasions. The face simply does not support sustained frustration. Second, he knows the line. Jimin is mischievous, but he is never cruel. His pranks don't embarrass. They don't hurt. They don't overstay their welcome. He knows when to stop and when to turn around and hug the person he just spent 10 minutes tormenting. And third, perhaps most importantly, he is always the loudest person laughing once the prank lands. There is something genuinely disarming about watching the architect of a scheme collapse into laughter the moment it succeeds. It's very hard to hold a grudge against someone who is clearly having the most fun in the room. Jimin is not just mischievous. He is a craftsman of mischief. But there is a deeper layer here that's worth slowing down for. The Ararang comeback was not a light undertaking. This was not a regular album release. The pressure surrounding it was enormous and real in every direction. ARMY had been waiting for years. The music industry had shifted significantly while BTS was away. New generations of artists had risen. Records that once belonged to BTS had been approached or surpassed. The entire landscape of K-pop had evolved. And now 7 men had to walk back out and prove that what they represented still mattered, not just to their fans, but to the culture. Ararang was made as a genuine reunion. 7 people in a room together processing 4 years of separation, individual growth, military service, solo careers, and the complicated question of how to move forward as a group without pretending those 4 years didn't happen. The album explored identity, belonging, and what it means to begin again. Every member brought pieces of who they'd become separately into something they were creating together again for the first time. That is not a small thing to carry into a recording studio. And in the middle of that wait, Jimin asked Jhope to record the same rap 5 times for no reason. It sounds trivial, but it wasn't. When Jhope walked into that booth for the 5th time, the room was full of people trying not to laugh. And in that moment, for a few minutes, the weight lifted. They were not 7 men trying to save their legacy or prove something to the world. They were 7 friends who had missed each other for 4 years and were finally back in the same room being ridiculous together. The prank was oxygen, and Namjoon understood that before anyone else did. Which is maybe why, despite being arguably the most analytically gifted person in the room, he had let himself get pulled into the bit without questioning it. Sometimes the smartest people in any group know exactly when to let their guard down. Not because they stop thinking, but because they recognize what the moment actually needs. Now we arrive at the part of this story that nobody predicted. The part that turned what started as a viral comedy moment into something that made thousands of ARMY cry on their timelines at 11 in the evening. Because after the laughter settled, after Jhope had finished dramatically hitting Jimin's arm and Namjoon had finished staring at the ceiling, one of the production staff noticed something. Jimin was crying. Not dramatically. No heaving sobs. Just eyes that had quietly filled with tears, the corners of his mouth still holding onto the smile from 30 seconds ago, but unmistakably wet at the edges. Jhope saw it first. "Yeah, why are you crying? You're the one who pranked us." Jimin laughed and wiped his eyes quickly. "I'm fine. I'm fine. But Namjoon, who had just been on the receiving end of the whole thing, who should by all logic have been the least sympathetic person in the room, went quiet. He watched Jimin for a moment with a different kind of attention, and then Namjoon said, softly, "You missed this, didn't you?" It wasn't really a question. Jimin didn't answer right away. He just nodded. Once. Small. Because that was the whole truth of it. For nearly 4 years, Jimin had nobody to prank. No studio sessions to walk into and quietly derail. No jhope to convince to do one more take. No Namjoon to accidentally pull into the orbit of a joke. No room full of people who knew him well enough to both fall for it and forgive him for it instantly. The prank wasn't just a prank. It was Jimin saying, in the most Jimin way imaginable, "I missed you. I missed this. I missed us." And jhope, who minutes earlier had been shouting his name across 2 rooms, quietly put an arm around him. No words, just the weight of a shoulder against a shoulder. The kind of gesture that doesn't need explaining between people who have known each other for more than a decade. Namjoon, who has spent years finding language for emotions that others can't articulate, chose silence too. 3 people stood in a corner of a recording studio in Los Angeles. Outside the window, a city that never sleeps kept moving. Inside, something much quieter was happening. Something that doesn't have a clean name, but that anyone who has ever missed someone deeply and then finally gotten them back would recognize immediately. When the full story reached ARMY, with all of its details intact, including this ending, the response was different from what usually follows a BTS funny moment. The memes came, as they always do. The image of jhope's expression walking into the booth for the 5th time became an internationally recognized reaction template within 24 hours. That part of the internet ran its course as expected, but alongside it, something else appeared. Long threads, short essays, fans who wrote about what it means for 7 people to find their way back to their rhythm. ARMY who said this moment captured something the album's 14 tracks were also trying to say, just in a different language. One fan wrote, "Jimin pranked Hobie in June. But in the end, we're all the ones who cried." Classic BTS. And that really is the only way to put it. RM said in the group's first joint interview ahead of Arirang that the most important thing was simply that they were there, back together again. Jimin said the exact same thing. Not in an interview, not in a Weverse post, but in a recording studio in Los Angeles, by asking his best friend to do one more take, pulling his leader unknowingly into the joke, and then tearing up when the laughter finally quieted down. ARMY, that is what makes BTS different. Behind the Spotify records that shattered every benchmark. Behind the Gwangwoman concert that 18 million people around the world watched live on Netflix. Behind the Arirang World Tour that became the largest ever mounted by a Korean act, covering more than 82 shows across 34 cities in 23 countries. There are 7 human beings who simply missed each other, who celebrated coming back together not only with music, but with laughter, with nonsense, with 5 unnecessary recording takes, with tears that nobody planned for. Arirang was made as a true reunion, 7 people in one room, processing 4 years of distance and growth, rediscovering what it means to be BTS without being bound to who they were before. And Jimin, with one quiet, one more time, said all of that better than 1,000 lyrics ever could. So if you haven't listened to Arirang from the first track to the last, go do that now. And while you listen, picture 3 people standing in the corner of a studio. One who just pulled off a prank, one who just got pranked 5 times over, and one who got pulled in without knowing, but wouldn't have had it any other way. Because that's BTS, and that's why we love them. Until the next video, ARMY, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Because in the world of BTS, if you look away for even 1 second, you might just end up recording the same thing 5 times before anyone tells you why. Annyeong. Purple Heart.